Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to have you all here. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the presentation. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A portal. We'll make sure to leave some time to answer these questions at the end. I also want to let you know that this session is being recorded. You can find today's recording, as well as our past webinars, on our website or the Elire Inc. YouTube channel. Throughout the session, we'll be running a few polls to get a better sense of the audience. We encourage you to participate as it helps us tailor today's content and improve future webinars based on your feedback. With that, I'll hand it over to Stephen.
Cool, sounds good. Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the session today. So for today's session, I'll start with let me go to so the main purpose of today's session is going to be features on supplemental data within FCCS. And then, so the agenda for today, go to the next slide. Okay, there. So first is that we're going to be doing, I'll do a quick introduction of myself, and then I'll talk about what Elire is, the company, and then I'll dig straight into the supplemental detail on the overview, and then I'll talk about the features of the supplemental details, and then eventually I'll go to, if we have any questions, we'll go into the Q&A session. So I'll just give a brief background about myself. I'm Wang. I'm a managing consultant here at Elire, mainly focusing on close and consolidations. So been working within the EPM suite with close and consolidations and also planning and budgeting within the Oracle EPM suite. Definitely done several implementations across the board within close and consolidations across multiple industries, and mainly working with starting from like design, building, and also supporting EPM applications. So fairly experienced with, or say over 10 years experience within the EPM suites, working across various industries within the sectors. Let me go to the next. Oh, sorry, my bad. Next one, I'll talk about give you guys a brief introduction of Elire if you guys don't know already. So Elire, we're pretty much a well-established organization, been here about over 19 years now, within mainly working with Oracle EPM products and also ERP products. So I know obviously we have a pretty big organization within the EPM cloud practice and ERP practice. We work with clients on either implementing, helping them find a better solution, or like upgrading their current technologies on it. We definitely provide a lot of we definitely have a lot of great resources that has over tons of over 15 years of experience within it. And definitely we work with different clients to provide really the insight and the best recommended approach on either on technologies or on solutions that would really benefit the clients from it. And we are a recognized Oracle Cloud and Kyriba implementation program. So in the next slide, I will just briefly going through, these are the services that we provided. As you know, EPM, obviously EPM is one of them, but we do provide other services as you can see on the slide with Oracle Cloud, PeopleSoft, Treasury, Managed Service. So definitely all across the board within it. If you're ever interested, just let us know. But these are the services that we provide to our clients. And the next slide here, this is just a slide that shows you all of our current clients and or existing clients that we have right now across the board. So definitely across various industries and sectors that if you ever have any things, we could definitely, but these are just some examples of our current clients, existing clients that we had. Next, I'll just go into EPM. If you guys don't know already, really what EPM consists of is just the suites of within the enterprise performing management suites. So close and consolidation, which is the one that we'll be talking about which is the FCCS. But there are other different, I would say, modules or suites within EPM planning. I would say it's another big one. And then we have account recs, data analytics, EDMC, enterprise data management, and narrative reporting. So definitely we do provide across we do have resources and implementations across other modules within the EPM suites. And then here are just some of, I would say, examples that we have within the EPM implementation projects that Elire has done over either existing or existing clients that we have. So, okay. So next, I'll hand it over to Jordan. We do have a poll question. We would just want to get understanding of what you guys are currently utilizing. So I'll hand it over to you, Jordan, on that.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, like Stephen said, before we continue, we'd just like to get a better sense of what you're currently using to gather supporting details, disclosures, and footnotes for your financial reports. You will see a poll pop up on your screen. Please take a minute to select your answer. We really appreciate your input. It just helps us better understand your current practices and tailor our webinars for the future. I'll give everyone just a little bit of time here to answer. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A portal. We'll be getting to questions at the very end of the presentation. Okay, Stephen, it looks like most people are currently using Excel and a couple other people are using different tools to do their supporting details, disclosures, and footnotes in financial reports.
Okay, thanks for that. So, so I'll just talk about, first, I'll just talk quickly about FCCS. So if you guys are using it or if you guys don't know about it, so FCCS is the close and consolidation tool within the Oracle EPM suite. And the main functionality within Oracle EPM FCCS is performing either loading your GL data and then performing consolidations and eliminations and translation. And then obviously just for the simplicity sake, there's a lot more complexity to it, but this is kind of the overall within FCCS. And and from what I've experienced over the past few years working, especially within Oracle FCCS, is that mainly a lot of users use FCCS mainly for their elimination. I think elimination is a really powerful tool within FCCS, and then also their translation, and then other within the ownership management, and then how your minority interests and other other financial calculations that are required for your closing consolidation process. However, what I've seen is that really supplemental detail is really, I would say, majority of the people from my implementations before don't really utilize supplemental detail a lot. And obviously there are different use cases that would really be useful from a supplemental detail perspective. But what I've seen is that it's really a underutilized module, I guess, within FCCS that typically I would say most people don't really use. But from what I've seen and my experience is that it's definitely a really useful tool, especially for the for the purpose that if you're using it mainly for collecting additional data for like your disclosures or supporting details and footnotes. So really what supporting a supplemental data manager really helps is that it really helps you manage all your additional data that you need to really do your financial reporting. And it could be going down to like additional details for like, mainly I've seen a lot with disclosures where you need to break down either your fixed asset or your debt, or you need to provide additional details to really what's making up your GL at a summary level, which really typically, when you're loading data to FCCS, you don't really get to that granularity, as opposed to with an ERP, you get to the transactional level of detail. But in FCCS, it's a more summarized level. And in a lot of cases, organizations I've seen with like disclosures of footnote is that they really need additional information, like breaking down either by their fixed assets, debts, roll forwards, or other examples of that. So financial supplemental data is really a good example of where you could definitely utilize the tool to help you collect those informations from users, and it really helps enhance that with the data. It helps with the data collection process where you don't have to rely on if I know right now some of you are using Excel or other tools to do that, but really if you guys are using FCC or if you guys already have FCCS implemented, then you could really utilize this functionality to collect additional information as you need it, instead of having to use either offline Excel spreadsheets that you need to really collect data, or using any other ways to do it right now. So let me go to the next slide. So really what the features of supplemental data is that outside of, as you guys know, in FCCS, there are limited and also standard dimensions within FCCS, like your accounts, entities, your scenarios, periods and years. However, within supplemental data is that you could create additional dimensions as you need it. It doesn't impact your overall your structures of your FCCS application. It's just you could create additional dimensions. So for example, if you need to create like what is the date information that you have for your debt, and then also maybe like additional descriptions that you need you need for that. You could create additional dimensions to fit what additional details you need to create. It's just that it doesn't impact as you know, if you add a new dimension, it really kind of impacts your performance, also your consolidation time, as opposed to that. And then also there is a limited dimensionality within FCCS. So within supplemental detail, if you need like additional information that you need to collect, you could definitely add additional dimension to your data collection. So that way it will capture all of the additional detail that you need for any of your financial reporting requirements. Second here is on the collection of intervals. So it definitely allows you to set what is the frequency that you need to collect those data, and then also have those workflow dimensions in place to do that. So if you need, so for example, if it's something that it only requires on the quarterly process, you could definitely set up the collection interval to a quarterly process as opposed to a monthly process. And then also if there's any yearly process that you guys have to do with the data collection, you could definitely have that too. And then within the so within supplemental detail, we have what we call data collection. And then within the data collection, we also have like the sub collections, which I'll get into later on really what it really is. It's typically, it means that it's like a form, or if you guys ever use a form or like a template that you have, it's just really setting up those templates, and then you could have additional details that you need with the sub collection. So within supplemental data, you have these what we call the data forms. It's a little slightly different than what you would see in like your normal data forms. It's just that these are the templates that you'll be using to for users to enter in those data to provide those additional information that you'll need in the supplemental detail. And then last but not least here, with the workflow process is that it is a required functionality. And supplemental details that you have to set up the workflow. So whoever is a preparer, who's the approver, and then who's posting it. Really similar to the journal feature, the journal workflow process, if you guys are familiar with that. But it does require you to have that workflow process in place to use supplemental data. I'll go to the next slide. So in the next few slides, I'll really be going through some of the features, showing you some screenshots on it, and kind of what really the supplemental detail, and then some of the setup that would be required from a supplemental detail perspective. So next slide here. So here, you can see, as I mentioned earlier, additional dimensions. So that I think that's really a key, that if you need like additional members, if you're trying to collect customer information or suppliers information, and those aren't your normal chart of account segments within your ERP systems, then you could create these dimensions within here. And then you could gather those informations when you create those templates, and then you could have them embed these dimensionalities within the templates and the data collection process. So this is where you'll see in the screenshots here, it will list out all your dimensions, and then you could add additional dimensions that you need. So I think this is really a big, I would say a big huge, where adding these new dimensions doesn't impact your overall existing application, like your database that you guys currently have. It's just an add-on to that, where you could elaborate on additional details that you need if you ever need it for like for your data. So next thing is on the data interval, as I mentioned earlier. So this data interval collection, it really determines what you're trying to collect from a dimension perspective. So as you know, in my earlier slide, first you define what additional dimensions you need to add, and then here's where you define what type of dimension makes sense when you're doing that data collection. So the frequency dimensions defines the frequency of the data. So typically it's your year, period, and scenario dimension to define the frequency, while the workflow dimension determines what dimensions you're really utilizing in the data collection form or template. So what kind of information you need to collect. And typically I would say here's where, if you have any like custom, like if you were to add any additional dimensions earlier with like, let's say customer information, supplier information, those are I would say, if in this case you need to collect those information from the users that you want those level of details, then you would just have typically in the workflow dimension section of it. Now I'll go to the next slide here. So this slide so the data collection section is going to be really the bulk of where you'll be setting that up within what kind of level of detail that you need, and then also what you want to collect from the user. And like I mentioned, you do have the ability to add even a fine. So data collection think of it as like an object, but you could definitely add additional sub collection, which kind of add into more finer information that you need to collect within a collection. So it's like kind of like a child underneath the data collection. So if you guys are familiar with like the parent-child relationship within dimensions and hierarchies, it's really the same similar concept, where you're just adding like a child underneath their collection. So you need to get really granular on that level of detail, that you could definitely add sub collections to it. And then on the right hand side here, I just kind of show some screenshots just so you could see that when you're setting up, these are kind of, if you need several like additional attributes, but this is the data collection is really the bulk of what you need to define what information you want the users to be entering and define when you're doing this supplemental detail information. So here's where here's an example of a supplemental data, and I just kind of show the screenshot here. So just for example, if you're doing like a debt form that you want additional information from a debt, and you can see from this screenshot here is that they need to enter like debt ID, debt descriptions, like what was the date, and then so you could definitely have various different fields, like for example, like dates, text descriptions. If you need like a drop down list, you have that. So there's a lot, I would say pretty endless up to like you could do with kind of configure your form to your requirement. And there's definitely a lot you could do, like when you get into, like, if you want to do more complex on the data collection, you could actually apply like calculations or additional logic to your supplemental data form. So it would fit whatever your requirement is to that. So you could get pretty fancy and pretty complex with these data collection forms. But what I show you here is just like a summary of, like, let's say you have a treasury bill of like the 3400, as you can see in the screenshot here, but then you're trying to really break out down what really makes up all your treasury bills. Here's where you could actually collect all those informations and then have that submitted and then be that supporting detail with that. And one of the key, I would say, really, I don't have the screenshot of this, but if you were to open up your normal data form that you have in FCCS, you could actually drill in. Let's say you see this treasury bill of this 3,400,000 amount, and you could actually do a drill through of this functionality, and then it will actually drill into this supplemental detail form. So that way, users, when you're reviewing your data, you can actually go in here and say, oh, what really makes up my $3,400,000, or what was the supplemental detail that the users enter in through these forms, and you could have that visibility to that too. So I think that's really useful when you're trying to analyze your data, and then you're like, what supplemental detail was entered in through this intersection that was prepared from the preparer. Okay. So this slide here, I just kind of showing you a screenshot of the supplemental detail analysis. So this is really, I would say, a pretty common one that when you're, let's say, when you're done with your analysis, or when you're done with your inputting and data collections, you can actually go into this page and then kind of filter on your what you need. Because I know typically when you're, I know the other page was more of an input. Here's where you can actually get the output of your entire supplemental detail, and you can actually export it to Excel and to have that information. But this is just a slide that shows you like additional supporting detail where you could see everything as a whole, from either from your collection that you a user should enter in for that particular intersection. So as I mentioned earlier, workflow is a requirement for supplemental details. So you do need workflow enable. And it's really like I mentioned, it's really similar to like a journal, where once a users enter in their data, they submit it, and then once a person approves it, and then you actually could post not the journal, but the supplemental detail to the actual GL side of it, where when you do your reports or your financial reports, balance sheets, income statement, that's when you actually could see that when a user's post that journal. So here's just another way, I guess, from a dashboarding perspective. It's more from who submitted, or you could keep track of the current status of your supplemental detail and how many users submitted, or who is still working on it, what's in progress. So this dashboard is really similar. If you guys ever use the workflow process within FCCS with like managed approvals, it's really similar. These dashboards are really similar to these, where you could see like how many you have incomplete, and then how many you have completed, and then also like who's on time, who's not on time, and so on. So it really gives you a pretty much like a quick view of a dashboard view of like what is the current status of your data collection for supplemental detail. So you could actually, if you need to see who's late or who needs to still needs to do their data collection, then you could see that on this dashboard view. Okay. So I know we're kind of have a few minutes on it, so just wanted to wrap it up here on this here. So just wanted to give you some key takeaways on really the purpose of this. So as you know, really the supplemental detail, I would say it's really useful when you have a really high volume of data that you're trying to have data collected and really wanted to expand on the level of detail that you need for that specific data, I would say that is really a useful way to utilize this functionality in this module. And especially when you have a constantly changing, like let's say your customer base or like your descriptions, trying to break out your different specific categories of your, let's say your debt expenses or your fixed asset. This really, I would say it's a really good way to kind of have that level of detail without having it as a like a member in your dimension. Because as you know, if you were to create like additional hierarchies or additional members within your current dimensionality, it really slows down your consolidation time as also your translation time. And that really has I would say, impact to it, as opposed to using supplemental data. It's more like I wouldn't say a one-time thing, but like when you're trying to collect the information, these are pretty unique. Like each fixed asset, maybe it's pretty unique only like for this month or like that. And I think that it's a really good way to utilize this functionality. So that way you could actually have that level of detail stored within FCCS within the application, as opposed to, I know earlier you guys said, I think majority of you guys use Excel or other offline copy. And with this way, you can actually have these supplemental data stored within your application. So that way, it's really beneficial when you're like, if you were to have like an auditor or when you're doing audits, that's when you could actually show like, oh, these are the level of details, and it really enhance the integrity of it where everything is within one application. So you could actually have all of your financial data reporting out of FCCS and have all of the supplemental and data collection within FCCS. So that way, from reporting, and you could actually generate all your reports out of it. Second point here I do want to call out is that workflow, you do have, it is a required field, so workflow has to be enabled with the supplemental detail. You cannot use it without the workflow, so you do need that approval. I've seen cases where if you really, some clients that doesn't really care about the approval, you could simplify a lot more, where you could just have one approver or a prepare approver, and then just have the submission where it could be a really simple, or you could get pretty complex and fancy with your approval process. And then, like I mentioned earlier, with this supplemental data, you do have the ability to collect non-numeric data. So dates, text descriptions are those where you could actually use that to collect all those informations. And then last but not least, I would say overall, it's just definitely a really powerful tool, with especially when you're having requirements with like your SEC or like different financial reporting requirements with like your footnotes, disclosures, roll forwards. I've seen those. It's really, I would say, definitely something that I would consider looking into if you guys aren't doing it right now, to kind of look into supplemental detailed data. So it could definitely help you a lot with your data collection process. Okay. Now, so now I'll start with the Q&A sessions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post it in the Q&A sessions, and then me and Jordan will monitor and then answer any questions. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but let me take a look at it. I think we have one question from a person, and let me read this question. So the question is, can the supplemental detail be collected from ERP, or it can be only collected using supplemental data form? So that's a very good question. So I know that if the data is already, I guess whoever asked this question, if the data is already in ERP, or there's a way to extract that data, I think there are possible ways you could use like data integrations or like via flat files to integrate into your supplemental data form. So it is definitely it's definitely there with the functionality. I think you'll just need to work with either the ERP or like kind of really get to a file that really fits the format that is required for that supplemental data file format, and then you would be able to load that data directly into those supplemental data forms. So you don't have to manually go in there and enter it. If you have that data available via FAT file or through your ERP systems, you could definitely integrate it with FCCS.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions we have, Stephen. So before we wrap up, just a quick reminder that today's session will be sent out via email in the next few days. The recording will also be available on our website and YouTube channel. For more resources, feel free to check out our EPM blog hub or sign up for our monthly cloud newsletter. Both links will be sent out after this session. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing your expertise with us today. We hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
All right, cool. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Have a good one.